Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers and agencies learn from other marketers across different industries. Today, we're talking with Jeff Greenfield, the co-founder of Provalytics, an attribution and planning platform for a cookieless world. Jeff is an entrepreneur with 3 decades of strategy, growth, and marketing experience, building and leading teams with an emphasis on innovative marketing enabled by new technology. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today. How have you been?
Been great, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was looking forward to the conversation. So I've got a small handful of questions for you. But before we do that, can you just tell me a little bit about Provalytics and your role in the organization? I'd like our audience to know kind of what kind of company it is and what you do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Attribution is one of the most important components of marketing today, trying to figure out what's working and what's not working. And I've been in this industry since the mid to late 2000s. I built one of the leading multi-touch attribution companies, C3 Metrics, and
Right.
exited there in about 2019 and thought I would never go back. But in the last 2 years, there's been so many changes and shifts in the world revolving around privacy and restrictions.
Right.
The world is kind of turned upside down from a marketer's perspective, especially those who are used to utilizing data to help make decisions. So we needed a new approach. We needed something that was built from the ground up to live in this kind of new world without cookies, without user level data. And that's really what Provalytics is all about, is being able to get those same granular level insights that we're used to getting with MTA, multi-touch attribution,
Mhm.
but being able to do it without requiring user level data.
Got it. Got it. Okay, great. And I assume you run the place, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I am the chief bottle washer, if you
Nice.
will. I definitely run the place without a doubt.
That's great. That's great. Well, you've got a really interesting background. I noticed that you started as a chiropractor and you were a magician before you rolled into the world of marketing and marketing analytics. And can you talk a little bit about your pre-marketing life and how that, has possibly influenced your world today?
Yeah, it definitely had a lot of influences, and I think a lot about this, because people always want to know, like, especially those that are starting off with their career, how do you draw a line from where you are today to where you're going to end up going,
Good
and
luck with that, right?
yeah, totally. And as you get older, you kind of look back and you say, okay, what's the consistency here? And the magic for me was just something. Every kid gets interested in magic. It's as you grow up, you start to understand how the world works, and then all of a sudden, something comes along and it defies logic, and so you want to understand how it actually operates. And most people get into it and then they leave it once they realize the secrets are there, but I really loved it, and I stayed in it and did it all throughout college and all throughout grad school. And what I did, the type of magic that I really loved to do was close-up magic, which was primarily cards and coins. And so it was utilizing my hands. And so when I was looking at my different career choices, a chiropractor seemed an obvious choice because it also utilized my hands.
Mm.
And I thought that that was going to be it for me. I thought that's all I was going to do was to be a chiropractor. But the cool thing is that when I went to chiropractic college in Los Angeles, I was able to work at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. So I was able to combine
Nice.
those two passions together, which was very exciting. But then I got injured after I was a chiropractor for a number of years and I couldn't practice
Yeah.
anymore. And so I was kind of stuck. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went on this whole kind of, if you will, a walkabout to figure out what was going to happen next. And I actually went back to do magic, but now the internet had just started taking off. It was the mid 90s. And I found myself in a scenario where I was making my own website and then I was able to help out people. And so now I'm now in this world of analytics. But if I have to step back and look at the big picture, when you think about magic, the role of magic is to amaze people, but it's also to hopefully reduce stress,
Mm.
if you will. It's hopefully relax people, but I also find that it helps people think outside the box. People that are kind of constrained with ideas, you think outside of it. When you go to the chiropractor, you're there because something's not working in your body. There's some stress in your body. So chiropractor kind of helps things working a bit better. Analytics, you can look at analytics as being, oh, it's just numbers and answers. But the way I look at it today is that the job of the marketer has become much more complicated. Technology was supposed to make our lives much, much easier. It really hasn't done that. CMOs today have to juggle so many different things. So I kind of see that my job is the same as it was as a magician and a chiropractor. It's really to utilize technology to at its best possible so that I can relieve the stress of the CMO to enable them to make better decisions. So really, I'm in the stress reduction business. I've always been that. So that's kind of the way I look at it today.
That's the line that carries through it all. I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm also curious how you found your way into First Approach, the branded entertainment agency. I would imagine that starting a branded entertainment agency is a lot harder than just starting up a regular old agency. I would imagine that, having the right connections into the entertainment world is critical, and lining up the right talent and other resources can be, quite challenging. Can you talk to me a little bit about that experience and how you built that business, maybe some of the challenges you faced and how you overcame them, thinking it might, be helpful to our listeners?
Yeah, well, that was actually part of my walkabout phase, and also kind of eating my own dog food, if you will. So
Okay.
after I was out and about and traveling the country doing magic, and then I was built out a consulting business, doing websites and then helping people, in the late 90s, once people had websites, they're like, I want to be at the top of the search engine.
Mm-hmm.
So I built one of the first SaaS tools called Position Solutions that automated the process of being at number one, sometimes number 1 through 20 for any search term. This is even pre-Google. So there I am, a year before that, I was on the road every week going to colleges around the country, being on stage, doing magic. And now I'm all excited because I'm at home, but I'm at home in my basement building my consulting business. And after about 6 months, I really missed being on the stage. There's something about being on the stage and being in the center of attention, if you will. And I missed it. So I was like, okay, I've got this business rolling with the consulting. What else can I be doing? So I reached out to friends of mine that were in LA to find out, what's the latest and greatest, what's coming down the pike. Because at the time, things would originate in LA. And I kept hearing from friends this concept of product placement. I'm like, what is product placement? Well, it's, when you see a Pepsi can on like an American Idol or something like that. So I ordered a couple of yellow pages from the LA County area, because back then not everything was online. Okay. So I got these big, thick yellow pages to my house, and I looked up product placement agencies, and there were a couple of them, and I called them, and I found out about their business. And I found out that they could pretty much put anything onto any set. They were great at doing that. And then I asked them about reporting, like how were they good at reporting? And they had no clue about reporting. They didn't know how to talk to ad agencies, didn't know how to speak the language. So I thought, okay, well, there's a great opportunity here. I can kind of be the middle person and build this up right as the internet is starting to take off. And I'm like, but now I've had like maybe 10 conversations about product placement with companies. How do I let people know that I'm the product placement expert? So I hired a couple of independent writers to write articles about me. And I used my own service, Position Solutions, so that whenever someone typed in product placement, I was the person quoted.
Oh, nice.
And it took a couple of months. And then before I knew it, I was speaking at conferences all over the country. I was being asked to speak at the Emmy organization. I was on all these closed door sessions with some of the top people in the industry, and started accumulating clients. And then it was very exciting because clients would get into a TV show or a movie, but then they were like, okay, how do I get them to actually say the name of the product? How do I get them to use it more or say how great it is? And I'm like, well, in order to do that, you got to actually own the episode. You have to pay more money. And that would always be my pitch, and never got anyone to actually go along with it, until after a while you run into some clients that are in kind of a bit of a stressful situation, where they're facing a scenario where competitors are coming to market. They've got a business that's about to be disrupted. And at that aspect, they're willing to try just about anything. And I had a couple of clients that were willing to try just about anything. And it worked incredibly well for them. And that business was great, but it was lacking measurement. And that's what kind of led me down the measurement path, because you would do these huge, large scale programs.
Right.
It would take a year or more to sell in, a year or longer to execute. But then to get somebody to do it again, they would want to see the measurement behind it. And there was a lot of anecdotal evidence, but not anything a CFO would sign off.
Right, right. Is that kind of, because I know in 2008 you kind of found your way into the attribution modeling world with the start of C3 metrics. Is that was that sort of born out of that need in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a client at the time that was doing a lot of digital marketing,
Okay.
billions upon billions of impressions a month. And what happened is that they were doing these, what we call CPA deals, cost per action deals,
Okay.
where they were paying, whenever someone was responsible for bringing in a new customer, they were paying out. But they were running with 5 different partners. And it turned out that every sale that they had, would have 5 different mothers, if you will, and everyone would claim responsibility. So they needed something, a piece of technology to fix this. And at the time I was building another startup and I had a team of folks that were working on something. So I grabbed a couple of developers and started building out a rudimentary platform that would automatically deduplicate, determine who was the winner of that conversion,
Okay.
but also figure out who started the conversion, who was the one who brought them and built the awareness, and then kind of who was in the middle and built out what then became the beginnings of C3 metrics. And I thought, okay, this is interesting because this will solve that problem of being able to measure effectiveness of different programs. And I also thought it would be very cool because I had come off a number of years of where everything was bespoke. We had built something custom for every client.
Sure.
And now was a tool set that could be plugged into just about every client. And I was fascinated with that concept because it reminded me of my position solution days. And I thought, okay, well, this is kind of the next gen of that. Let's see where this goes.
That's cool. And talk to me a little bit about sort of how Provalytics and C3 are different, and maybe what advantage Provalytics can bring to a marketer's world that they, can't get today from any other platform.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back first because before the days of digital, all we had were TV, radio, and print.
Right.
And before digital, for younger marketers, there were brands out there that somehow were able to build brand recognition, name recognition, and build massive businesses. But what was amazing is that the advertising didn't directly link to the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Now there were coupons and things like that, but other than that, somehow they were able to measure. And there's technique out there that we all know, marketing mix modeling or media mix modeling, where they look at correlation,
Sure.
they look at the contribution, but it was always a heavy lift. It was always a project. It would take months to put together. But these big brands built huge businesses just by doing this. Well, they were supposed to do it once a year, but a lot of brands waited every 4 or 5 years to do it. But all Marketing Mix did was give you an allocation of how much to spend per channel. And then it was up to that channel manager to figure out how to allocate.
Yeah.
When digital came along in the mid to late 2000s, Marketing Mix didn't really know what to do with it. Some of the original models would come out and say, spend X amount percent more on digital. And if they were to dig in, they would say, wow, double your spend in affiliate. Well, you can't really double spend in affiliate. It's a CPA deal. Okay, well, 10x your spend in brand search. They didn't really understand it.
Right.
And what excited marketers about digital was the idea that I could spend money today and at the end of the month, I could actually see the result. I could see the clicks. And that led to the growth of multi-touch attribution because I could get results in between my marketing mix models. And so what C3 built upon was the idea that we could actually see 100% of the digital trail, not just clicks coming to the website, not just how people were making their way through your website, but even impressions. Because when I built out C3, we built out agreements with Google, with Facebook in the early days, even with Amazon, where we had tags that were up. So someone would scroll through their newsfeed in Facebook, see an ad, not even click on it, and then 9 months later come to the website. We could tell a client of ours that someone came to the website from this ad. So it was pretty amazing. And so what it was built on is this concept of having 100% deterministic digital data, and then using machine learning to model through it to be able to come out where you should spend more and where you should spend less. And our focus was primarily enterprise clients that are always on and spending lots and lots of dollars in marketing.
Right. Okay.
And that did great. And then all of a sudden, Facebook decided no more tags, which meant we're not going to get any more impression data from Facebook. But in the early days, that was okay because we had a number of years worth of data.
Okay.
Then YouTube came along and said, no more tags on YouTube. Okay, so now we have two of the major areas, but it's still not a problem because there's still so much deterministic data.
Yeah.
Then Snapchat started growing. They didn't allow tags. TikTok came along. They didn't allow tags. And then before you know it, there's more places that don't allow tags than do allow tags. So the concept of having deterministic data, it's not there anymore. So I exited there in 2019. Like I said, I didn't think I was going to go back. I spent some time in television, and then I decided to take a look because I was hearing about all these emerging companies that were growing in attribution, and there was a lot of investment that was coming into the space. So I was looking for a company to back. I wanted to invest in one. I wanted to advise one. And I looked at all the newcomers, and I realized that all they were doing is click-based attribution. This concept of knowing who was bringing people to your site, of where the awareness was coming from, was gone. It was like they completely forgot about it.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so third-party cookies are going away. The iOS changes are there. The privacy regulations are rolling out across every single state. And now there's more walled gardens than ever because Google's putting up the walls. There's Walmart. There's all this retail media. So now the only data that marketers have is really their first-party data that's on their website. They don't have anything else. So I needed to start fresh. And I needed to look at, well, people don't like marketing mix modeling. They like MTA because MTA is always on and gives an answer faster. But what MTA was lacking was incrementality. It would tell you what the value was, but it wouldn't tell you what the value would have been if you hadn't have done that. And that's incredibly important because MTA can tell you, hey, this brought you in 100 sales, but the reality is 99 of those could have been brought in without that happening.
Got it.
So you needed more involved math. So I started from scratch about 2 years ago and started building out this platform with my data scientist, Todd Kirk. Two of us have worked together for about a dozen years and built out something from scratch that, instead of taking in user level data, does not require tags at all, is 100% privacy compliant, just takes in data from the platforms, is able to tell you at a granular basis what's working, what's not working, and accurately forecast where you should spend your next marketing dollar. So it's very exciting. It is really next gen attribution because we really had to step back and say, okay, the world has completely changed.
Right.
We had to think about the next new thing that comes about. What is the minimum amount of information you're going to be able to get? And the minimum amount you're going to know as a marketer is, on this day, I spent this amount of money and I got this many impressions.
Yeah, right.
And so it's an impression-based model, which just allows us to accurately integrate not only all of the digital channels, but also every offline channel that's out there, and bring in all the traditional media as well, which is really, really cool.
That's great. That's awesome. That's yeah, and I'm sure 5 years from now, if that, things will be completely different again. So it's great and exciting that you've been able to develop a platform that's able to help marketers the way it does, which is fantastic. So as we roll into our final set of questions about marketing agencies, before we do that, can you just talk to me a little bit about building one's own personal brand? You've done what seems to be a great job of building the Jeff Greenfield brand. And I'm sure there are plenty of other marketers out there who would like to consider the same, what advice would you give to a marketer or anyone for that matter looking to do the same kind of thing?
Well, thank you. First off, I think one of the most important things is you want to have a consistent message across
Yeah,
wherever you're at. And I think one of the biggest disconnects that marketers tend to forget about is that they forget that your personal brand online is kind of like your dating profile. And my wife and I, we love watching these reality TV dating shows. Right now, we're really into the Indian matchmaking show. We absolutely love it. But I see the same consistent message across all of them, which is, in the Indian matchmaking show, you're looking at, they call it the bio data, the sheet that the matchmaker gives you on the person, and
hmm,
there's a photo, and there's a lot of times complaints that the photo doesn't look like the person the way they look now.
sure,
And that's a big disconnect. And especially in today's world where it's so easy to have a meeting via Zoom. And so you're going to meet this person very quickly from a business perspective. Please just do yourself a favor and update your photo on LinkedIn and across everything so that it looks like you today. A friend of mine here locally, uh, I was on his LinkedIn the other day, and I swear to you, and he's my age. His photo was from high school.
oh,
I'm not kidding. And I know that people want to put their you want to put your best picture out there. And I always tell people, first off, you do not have to have a professional photo taken.
sure,
If you just go into photos that friends have taken of you, you really want a photo when you're smiling and when you're happy, because you want to make sure that you try to come across like you truly are,
sure,
and that's always the best thing. So
right,
I think that's the first thing is to do that. But the second thing is to really, step back and think about your story. Think about the story that you want to say and put out there, and also understand that your story, is going to be fluid based upon what you're doing now. But always, at least once a quarter, look over everything with a critical eye. And one of the best ways to do that is to like take your LinkedIn and print it up on a piece of paper
hmm,
and force yourself to read it on print. Because sometimes when you read it, you'll take out a pen and you'll start editing things, and you'll look at it with a critical eye and you'll be like, oh my God, why did I put that there? I can't believe I did that. Because when you're cutting and pasting things into LinkedIn, the boxes are small and you forget about things.
sure,
So I think it's important to just kind of look at it and just make sure that the story makes sense. And then also reach out to like a mentor or someone else to have them look at it, because
it's a good idea.
it's the toughest thing to look at things through your own lens. I mean, one of the toughest things is building your own brand or building your own company's brand. It's always easy to be critical of someone else. It's sometimes very tough to criticize yourself. But find someone that you have in your life. Like my wife is my coach, if you will, and my partner. And whenever she proofreads something that I put out there, she has a trick that she learned from her news days, which is she reads backwards. She starts from the last word,
Hmm,
because what ends up happening is when you read a paragraph, you tend to read it and you skip over words. Sometimes you find duplicate words, but when you read backwards, you actually have to read every single word. And it's a great way to
hmm,
catch all sorts of issues with it as well.
that's interesting.
But I would say your photo, look at things with a critical eye, and make certain that your story makes sense for who and what you are today.
Cool, that's great, great advice. So I'm curious, do you currently or have you in the past worked with any marketing agencies? And if so, what have you used them to help you do?
Oh yeah, there's lots of opportunities out there for, SaaS companies, B2B companies
Yep.
to use agencies to help kind of build your presence, if you will. For me, in the past, it's been around both buying ads and advertising.
Okay.
So at C3 in the early days, we were one of the first B2B companies to buy television. So we'd use an agency to help us do that. Typically, most of the retargeting and stuff like that we do, that's pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
And luckily, when you are measuring campaigns, you have to get in on all of the details. Like, in the early days of C3, we understood the insides and outs of Facebook, of Google, of AdRoll, of Criteo.
Sure.
So once you start understanding the guts from a client's perspective, to set one up for ourselves was pretty straightforward. But I've used agencies from anything from content creation to helping me build out a podcast. I did a podcast series at C3 called This is Attribution. So there's lots of different things that we've utilized them for to help build it, because when you're a startup, it's so much easier to hire an agency than hiring a team of people.
Sure.
Because an agency, you can come in and they can come in and help you out for a period of time to kind of get you to that next level.
Yeah. So any advice you give to a marketer thinking about bringing a new agency on board?
I would say to be very specific in terms of what it is that you want to accomplish.
Okay.
What are your specific goals that you have in mind? Agencies always like to know what is success going to look like for you? When are you going to say, oh, wow, this is great? And also think to yourself as well, at what point would you be willing to say, hey, use me as a reference? And let an agency know that up front, because you want to show them where the goalposts are.
Yeah.
Because you really want them to hit it out of the park for you.
Right.
They want to do that. But if you set their expectations in the beginning, hey, if we get there, I'm going to be your best reference for you, then let them get there for you. Yeah. I think that's probably the best piece of advice. Be very clear about what you need to have done and what you want to accomplish.
That's good. Excellent. And so my last question for you is, if an agency was trying to knock down your door and attempting to win business from you, what advice would you give them?
I would say reach out to me to learn more about my business and create communication with me. That would be the most important thing, is to don't come in trying to sell me something. Don't come in trying to think that you know my business. The biggest way, and I have a colleague on LinkedIn who has a company called Mega Deals, and they focus in on huge deals, hundreds of millions of dollar deals. And one of the things that he always talks about is that where the money really is inside of organizations is understanding what their key initiatives are.
Okay.
And key initiatives come from the top down. Don't ever start emailing a company cold thinking that you understand their key initiatives. Instead, start reading up on them and then try to come in through another door. If there's a webinar that's going on, try to figure it out and then try to just start a communication. Mm-hmm. And then once you understand what those key initiatives are, if you're able to provide services that can help that out, that's great. If not, if you know someone that can, one of the best ways of securing future business is to say, hey, I know someone, can I help? Can I introduce you to? Being an introducer is great, because then I'm indebted to you forever.
Sure.
And that's a great thing as well.
Yeah. Built up some trust, certainly. Yeah.
That's right.
I always like to tell our agency clients to, almost pretend to some extent that they're not interested in winning the marketer's business, that they're really just there to try and help them and enlighten them and make their worlds better because of the insights or perspective that they're sharing with them. So that's great advice. Well, listen, Jeff, I really appreciate the time that you've given us today, and you've got just a fascinating background and given us some great insights into not only the world of attribution, but how to create and find that line across the entirety of your career, one's career, how to build up a new business, and how to build up a personal brand. So we've covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time, but it's been great, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Mark. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Heidi. You have a good rest of the day.